you guys are actually like in an experiment. And they're like, what?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, you guys are part of this like big experiment where we don't know what's going to happen to your brains when you're 30.
And all of my friends, I remember they used to think of, like, they used to say, like, oh, you're stupid because you're in learning support. And it was like, not just me, everyone that was in learning support. We would even call ourselves like the stupid class.
Welcome to The Search for Wellness, a podcast dedicated to discovering the path to a healthier, more fulfilling life. Join us on this heartfelt journey as we share inspiring stories, insightful conversations, and practical tips to nurture your mind, body, and spirit.
All right, ladies. So welcome to The Search for Wellness. I'd love you girls to introduce yourselves.
Okay, my name is Teresa, and I'm Bolivian and American, and I've lived in Kenya for almost 10 years. So yeah, and I've just graduated from high school, so like Sofia.
My name is Sofia. I am 18 years old, and I am from Colombia in the US. I also graduated with her. We're from the same class of 2024. And I've lived in Kenya for 4 years. And after this, I plan on going to the US for university.
Nice. And how does it feel to live in Kenya?
I love it.
Me too. My favorite place that I've lived in.
Yeah, I lived in South Africa before this. And I guess they're very different, both of them, but I did prefer Kenya quite a bit.
Yeah, no, it is lovely, and we have the best weather here.
Yeah, the weather is so good.
Yeah, you always hear stereotypes about it being like super, super hot, but when it came, it's pretty good. It's not too hot or anything like that. No, it's definitely not. People make it seem like much worse.
And I also did hear that there was like a lot of traffic that you couldn't get anywhere.
Yeah,
I haven't. It's not, in my opinion, at least from what I've seen. It's not that bad. Like because they were like telling me that I have to leave 30 minutes earlier than I usually would because of the traffic. But I haven't noticed it's like that. Obviously, it has its days where sometimes you can't even like go somewhere, but usually it's like pretty good.
But it's also because we're not going downtown or to like city center.
Exactly.
That's not often, so it's not as bad.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So the reason I wanted to invite you guys here today was mainly to talk about a few things that I feel like a lot of teenagers, a lot of kids in school go through. And now that you both have graduated from school, I think it's really nice to have an insight into what you guys have experienced when it comes to smartphones, when it comes to social media, when it comes to bullying, when it comes to anything that you have experienced in school. And the reason for that is I think that a lot of parents are very concerned as of lately. And so thank you so much for, first of all, making this podcast happen today and for coming here to share all of this information with me, because I think it's also takes a lot of courage for girls your age to step up and say, you know what, I'm ready to share some of the experiences that I've had in school. So I wanted to just start off by asking you, Sofia, at what age did you get a smartphone?
I got my first smartphone, I think it was at like age 12 or 13. So I was still in middle school, I think, and it was in South Africa, and it wasn't the best experience.
Did you have a social media account immediately?
Yeah, so I started off, when I was a lot younger, I used my mom's Instagram. So I used to have an iPod Touch, and I had my mom's Instagram so I could post on my mom's Instagram. So it was kind of like to her followers, and I would tell my friends to follow my mom's Instagram. So we kind of like shared an account. So that one was pretty safe. It was because it was obviously my mom it was hers, so she completely monitored it. I would just mainly just like post like, oh, playing this game, but it was like completely safe. But then afterwards, when I was at like age like I think 12 or 13, I got my own Instagram, and I think I was very young to get it, and if I could go back, I would have tried to wait a little bit. And I understand at the time I did want it a lot. Especially because of the pressure, because there was kids all around me getting Instagram with their phones, taking it to school. And I was kind of one of like in my school, the last ones that got it, at least in my friend group. So they were all posting and just like posting with each other. And I was the only one who didn't really know what was going on. So I really did want it, but it was quite early.
And the reason you wanted it is because you were feeling left out.
Yeah, 100%. That was mainly it was the only reason I wanted it, and to feel like popular and cool and to fit in. I thought in my head, if you had social media, you would immediately be popular and cool. Yeah.
And you, Teresa, when did you get a smartphone?
I think I got my first like iPhone 5 at like 13, 12 or 13. But I didn't get social media until super, super recently. Like, I got Snapchat and TikTok, like, maybe 2 years ago. But I got Instagram, like, less than a year ago, like 4 months ago, something like that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, really recently, really, really recently.
Was that challenging for you in school?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I kept myself entertained on TikTok and stuff like that, but I wasn't really posting or anything. And not having Instagram, I feel like, is the biggest thing because that's like the main social media platform in high school, right? Like everyone's messaging on social media group chats. Group chats are on Instagram, you know. And yeah, I was really sad. I wanted Instagram for a long, long time. Like, I've wanted it for like 3 years now, and I only got it super recently. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
But because both of you have had social media, but you had it at a very later stage, and you had it at a very earlier. I wanted to know from both of you the differences that you've experienced in your schooling, in your education, in how you dealt with situations. So, like for you, Teresa, the fact that you didn't have social media in school, but you still had a smartphone. Did you feel like you were left out? Did you feel like you were not included? Did it help you with your academics a bit more?
I think it's hard to say, but I think there's some things where I felt left out, but not by anyone's fault. You know, it's literally just the fact that I didn't have Instagram. Like, I wasn't on group chats that I would have been on otherwise, or I wasn't like seeing what other people were doing as often, right? Like, if I heard about these things, I heard about them in person, so I still heard about them, of course, but it came to me later. But yeah, so I think it might have helped me a little bit in staying focused, but because I also had TikTok and there's also YouTube and stuff, you know, which I don't consider social media like TikTok and Snapchat and stuff. But yeah, so I was still on those other platforms just entertaining myself. But so I think that in terms of like distracting myself and keeping focused like in schoolwork, it's not that different. I think there's more to see, but I think in terms of like how much time you're spending on social media, it's pretty much the same. If you're on YouTube or if you're on Instagram, like you're still on a social media platform.
You're still on a social media platform.
Mm-hmm.
And what about you, Sofia?
I think having social media at such a young age, especially, it affected me on how I handled situations. Because when I remember in middle school, when I would get into a fight with my friends, I would immediately start posting about it online, and so start like calling them out. And I remember actually like I handled situations so immaturely because obviously I was very young. And I remember the time one of my friends was like, yeah, like I got diagnosed with depression, like the doctor diagnosed me, and then I posted on my story, you can't even get diagnosed by a doctor. Like, it's just like things like that I would, because I wasn't educated and I had no idea about it. And my parents didn't know that I was posting about this either. So I just like didn't really learn how to use the internet safely. Obviously, either me or it was all of my friends. It wasn't just me, like it was all of us, because we were at such a young age. We were thinking that we were so cool and popular for like posting those things. But in reality, there's like just that like internet, whatever goes on there, it always stays there. I wish I could have known that, like the digital footprint. And that like everything is always going to be there. And I think even at school, as she was saying, I think we don't do it intentionally, but if you don't have Instagram, it's definitely like, I can imagine it's very different, because as she was saying, like most group chats that I have, they're on Instagram or Snapchat. I don't really have any WhatsApp group chats. So I do definitely think that did help me, especially in high school, which is why I loved having social media in high school when I finally was like maturing a bit as well and learned how to use it safely. And I think it's very important to know how to use internet safely, and just like knowing what to post and what not to post, and trusting your parents as well, but with helping you on it.
Did the school ever educate you guys on how to like use these platforms or anything like that? Was there any awareness around stuff like that?
I would say that they tried sometimes in like 11th grade, 10th grade, right? Maybe sometimes where they were just like awareing you that there is your digital footprint and what not to post and how it can affect you when you like apply to college and stuff like that. But at that point, a lot of people had already had social media for like 6 years, you know, like all of middle school, a lot of high school, you know, so if they had done something like that was already out there on the internet and the school didn't really let you know that this is what's going to happen. So I think like, I think our school tried sometimes, you know, to like, oh, like just let us know what not to put on the internet, but I think it was very rare, and I think
Yeah,
that they didn't do it at an early enough age. Maybe they anticipated that people would get social media later on in their lives, but pretty much everyone had Instagram by like 6th grade. So
I agree with you. I wish I wasn't here in middle school, but I mean at my old school, they didn't really like teach us about internet safety at all, which is why I was so uneducated about it. And I wish they could have started, because it sucks, but the reality is that people are starting to get phones at a younger age with social media.
Yeah.
And it's just starting to be younger and younger, the age that you see. And I wish that schools could like realize that they need to be taught at a young age the importance of safety. And like an idea maybe that they could do is they could have like a professional, for example, if we're talking about Snapchat, they could have like a professional from Snapchat come in and have it mandatory for the school to go and watch, and also have some parents as well come in and watch them and just talk about just internet safety, what to put out there, and also just having that, if you're at a young age, having that supervision by parents. I think it's extremely important. And it sucks to be the kid having your parents supervise.
Yeah.
It sucks. But I mean, it has to be done, because I know if I would have gotten that supervision, at least I don't think I would have been posting the things that I was, and just I would have handled situations very differently.
And so when you talk about parents, there's an interesting thing that I believe that we can do as much as a parent, you can do as much as you can at home. And then there's the school, and the school can do as much as they can at school. However, if one of the other systems fails, then you both have failed. Because essentially, if I'm sending my child to school and I'm giving her a phone, and then at home, I'm taking that phone away from her, and I'm on my phone constantly, also that is also representing me as a bad parent, you know, and that's bad parenting. So there should be some sort of understanding and communication, I believe, also between the school and the parent. So like, especially if I'm a parent who's completely against giving my child a smartphone, there should be some sort of understanding with the school and the parent that this is where we stand and this is how it works.
Yeah.
And I think with the school, I also don't blame them, because all of this is very new.
Yeah,
This is all
I
very
agree.
new to all
I
of
agree
us.
as
Like
well.
I keep telling my boys, who are twin boys who are 11, that you guys are actually like in an experiment. And they're like, what?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, you guys are part of this like big experiment where we don't know what's going to happen to your brains when you're 30, because of the amount of social media, the amount of internet, the amount of all of this stuff that you are faced with, you know. And then there's also the pressure, the peer pressure, the pressure of, you know, education, the fact that you need to perform better in your classes, but then there's a pressure of being an amazing student, there's a pressure of being popular, there's a pressure of being, you know, posting the right thing, getting the likes, getting the comments, getting all of that, you know. It's all of that pressure that also comes in and boils in on into this.
Yeah.
And that leads me to my next question, which is bullying. Now, there is obviously physical bullying, but physical bullying is even, I would say, in a way, easier to deal with than
100%.
social media bullying
I
and,
agree.
you know, internet bullying.
Yeah, I
So,
agree.
Teresa, maybe you can give me something about that.
Well, since I wasn't necessarily on social media at the middle school stages, which I would say is the worst for internet bullying, but I know that a lot of my friends went through bullying online, especially on Instagram. I don't know why Instagram was the main platform, but it was. And people would send really nasty messages either from their accounts, like just as people that we know, or like create other accounts and pretend as if they like know them. And I had a friend who got messages from this anonymous account, which was obviously someone from our school. Like we still don't know who, but it was someone from our school, someone in our grade, who was sending her messages like, oh, you looked really fat today, blah, 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 blah. You looked really ugly. You should stop eating, blah, blah, blah. And they would just say like really nasty things about what exactly she did that day. So it made her feel like super watched and as if she was getting stalked by this random person. And then on top of that, they were also like insulting her appearance and her personality.
Oh, gosh.
And yeah, she would talk to us and she would like cry about it. It was really traumatizing, I think, for her, you know. And I know multiple people who had the exact same experience. So this person was just harassing multiple people in school online, you know. And if we had known who it was, obviously we would have gone to the school and let them know, like, can you help us with this, like talk to this person. But we never found out who it was, right? So like the effects of that were still present, and we just never figured out who was doing it. So I think it creates like longer lasting trauma in some way, because like it kind of makes, especially when they're like faking stalking you, it makes you like, it can make you super paranoid about like, oh, someone's watching me, I need to like, you know. So I think especially when you're like 14, you know, you get really freaked out super easily, and that's one of the main things that if I was experiencing that, when I got fake like numbers texting me, I would freak out, you know. So I can't imagine what it felt like when they were describing her every move when she was like 13.
I mean, as an adult, I feel self-doubt. You know, I get self-doubt. And it's so easy for us to even just doubt ourselves without anyone else outside of us telling us there's something wrong with us. And then being a teenager, the worst thing you want is somebody else to give you that. Because first of all, you're going through so much at that point, you know. I mean, no one understands what a teenager goes through, but then you have your hormones going all over the place, you know, your body is changing shape, your mind is changing, everything is changing. And then to have somebody from outside, you know, let alone like a friend or somebody in your class do that to you, it's really hurtful. And it can really shape you into the person you become in the future, which is quite tragic. Sophia, what have you had any experiences with social bullying?
I definitely think so. I think as well, as you were mentioning, as a teenager, it's terrible because you're trying to figure out who you are as a person, and you're already not loving yourself too much. You're comparing yourself to others yourself, and then you just see other people talking about you online as well. I've gotten in the past multiple, especially I see from guys, they'll send my stories to each other, and they'll be like, oh, she looks so ugly in this, and they'll think that what they're doing is harmless, and that like, oh, it's so funny, let's just make fun of her appearance or how she looks. But when and the thing is, eventually people always figure it out. So like they think that it's a harmless little thing that they're just sending it to each other, but eventually the person will find out. Just like I did, I found out what the people were saying about me. I saw the chats, and it was just like terrible because I was already hating, like I didn't love my physical appearance, and just seeing other people commenting on it, especially they were from my grade, it just made me doubt myself even more. And I think it's so easy. Personally, right now, I think I've seen the people hating, it's been more on TikTok on the comments, and I see it a lot, not even on my post because I have I don't have a private, but I don't have like a big followers, but I see it, for example, if you go on like an influencer's TikTok page and you look through the comments, and there'll be like perfect, and you will still see people shaming them. So then you just look at those comments and you see like anonymous people that are talking bad about the influencer, and you're like, if the influencer looks ugly, then I must look horrible. And it's just like, it's so easy for people to create an anonymous account and just talk like about appearances. But the funny thing is that in real life, if they saw that person, they would never mention those things. Like as well, like the guys even that were sending these messages about me, they were my friends in real life. They would like, they even had liked my story and everything. So here I was thinking, oh, like I look good in this, but in reality, they were like sending it to each other and making fun of me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's hard. I mean, I feel like for you guys, it's a lot tougher than it was for me growing up, because at least for me, it was either say it to my face or you hear somebody else saying, oh yeah, that person said this about you, but you're not really sure if they really said that or if this person is stirring it up or not. Exactly. This is a bit more challenging.
And that's also a big problem, I think, with rumors. So like, maybe a situation does happen, but then people will like escalate it and like add something in. So it starts off by being just a little harmless tiny thing, but then the next person, they'll be like, oh, and they also did this, even though it's not true. And it happened so much, I think, in high school, especially the rumors of like things that girls have done or anything, just like they just escalate it and they just start inventing things and everyone just believes it. And that's the funniest part, that like they won't even like blink twice about, like they'll just immediately believe it and think that you're telling the truth, even if there's no evidence or anything. And it's just so easy for people to just change their story up, twist it up, and make you look like the worst person. And it happened. I saw it happening so many times.
And does the school, like, let's say if somebody was having an issue, was getting bullied or whatever, how does the school deal with stuff like this?
I think the school, personally, I do not agree with the way they dealt with it. So I have a friend that she actually, so people were like, she had posted something and the guys were like sending it around and body shaming her. And she found out about it and she got very sad and she didn't really know what to do. So she went to the counselors and, So she went to the counselors and like she went to them asking them to like not involve anyone else, but then long story short, they got like the head of the school involved, and they were going to talk to parents, and without this girl's consent. So all of this was happening without this girl's consent, and I think they do not handle it well, because after that she immediately told she went to, because she got scared as soon as she found out that so many people were finding out about this, so she told the counselors that she was lying about it even though she was not, just because she got intimidated about it. And so I think the school definitely does not handle it in the best situations. I know I don't know actually, a lot of people in my grade and like even in lower grades didn't really trust the counselors. So
Yeah.
I think that they did not do it in the best way. They didn't handle these situations. I don't know if you have a different experience.
I mean, I agree with that. I mean, I think it depends, obviously, because I haven't really seen many people report bullying at our school. I think our school is pretty good in general about bullying. Yeah, I think it actually is. Like, I think that I've never heard of like physical bullying at our school, nothing like that. But there are some circumstances where people like don't bring it to the school, but it's very apparent, like it's just happening and they don't do anything about it. Like, I know someone who he's a very nice guy, and he always approaches people and he always talks to them, and people will be like very defensive when he does something offensive. And I don't know, school just doesn't handle it well because they never address when it like happens. They just like let it happen, and then some people will get irritated with him even though he's very harmless and stuff. And I think that the school could definitely, or just any school in general, could handle situations where there's obviously something happening but they just don't want to address it because it's not that serious yet. And I think that they could address it at the earlier stages before it gets into like an actual case of like severe bullying or anything like that.
And as a parent, Teresa, what would you tell me to look out for? Let's say if I know my child is being bullied, or I don't know my child is being bullied actually, but then there are these telltale signs and maybe there's something that I need to look out for. What would it be?
I think if your kids stop talking to you as much about like what they're doing on social media or just about their social life in general. And also, I think if they just get sadder, like
Yeah, I agree.
It's hard to say.
To her, I think just looking out kind of for the behavior, for any
Yeah.
changes in behaviors. Obviously, it's normal for teenagers to start getting like a little bit grumpy when they're like growing up. But I think especially like if they're locked in their room a lot, if you're starting to see like their habits change, they're starting to kind of like rebel a lot. Or just checking in as well with them, making sure that they trust you, and trusting them as well that they're doing the right thing. I think having that trust is super important, and just them knowing that you're gonna be there for them unconditionally. I know at least for me personally, that really helped with my parents. They were always there for me, and I was never really afraid to tell them about anything because they always like told me that they could trust them, and like the actions that they did, they would never kind of, even when I did tell them about something, they wouldn't really panic about it. They would approach it in a calm way, and so I would kind of it kind of leaded me to want to tell them more.
I agree. I also think that, like, from personal experience, I think if they start doing things which are very, like, doing one thing too much, this is a very specific example, but, like, if someone's getting bullied for their appearance, like, people are calling them fat or ugly or blah, 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 then if they start working out a lot, or if they start, like, commenting on what they're eating,
Or
and
maybe changing
that
their
kind of thing.
clothes.
Exactly.
Changing
Like,
their
dressing
dressing.
baggy or
Yeah.
dressing more skin tight, like, whichever way it goes, if it's, like, very drastic from the way that they usually are, then I think that that's kind of a tell that like someone's telling them something about themselves and they want to change that now. So,
And would you think having like a life coach or an outside like somebody who's like neutral, like maybe a life coach or something like that would help them?
Yeah, I definitely, growing up, I always had a therapist as well. And I think it helped me so much because I knew whenever I wanted to tell something to my parents, I would always tell my therapist about it first. And I would ask my therapist, how do I tell them, like, how do I approach the situation? And she would be right next to me when I would tell, if I wanted to tell my parents something, she would be right next to me, helping them as well and helping me, helping both of us. And she would be kind of in the middle, being on my side, but also on their side. And I think it definitely calmed things down a lot and also helped my parents as well, kind of like figure out like and make sure that let them know that they're not alone and that the therapist was also there to help them and not just me. I think it's super important to have that, and it definitely helped me a lot.
Yeah. Did you have a life coach or a therapist?
I don't think I needed that.
Lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can't really say much on that topic.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But that's really good. Can I ask what was the other reason why you had a therapist? I know that you had told me once in the past that you were diagnosed with ADHD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had ADHD. I also had anxiety. And I've always kind of had trouble, especially I remember like in 6th grade, because of my ADHD, I had a lot of trouble kind of like adapting. And so we went in middle school, we went from kind of elementary where you had like,
So you got diagnosed when you were how old?
probably like 7 or 6. So I was
Wow.
very young.
Okay.
So I was falling asleep in classes. I was also just like not staying still. And my teachers actually were the ones who told my parents about it. So I was diagnosed at a very young age, thankfully. And my parents were always very supportive to me about it. They never shamed me at all for having ADHD. They never made me believe that I was less than anyone else just because I had that. So I think it definitely, that also helped me a lot. And yeah, so having ADHD and anxiety, I always had trouble kind of like adapting. So in elementary, we had nothing responsibilities. Teachers would do everything for us. Where on the other hand, in middle school, there was like that complete change where you were assigned homework now. You had to keep yourself organized. The teachers were not going to be on top of you telling you, have you done this? No, they just expect you to turn it in. And I personally had a lot of I struggled a lot doing that. So I started a therapy as well because I was kind of having problems making friends. And I was bullied a bit as well. And I was
Were you bullied due to the ADHD or?
No, not due to the ADHD, but it's just middle school, by the guys in middle school.
Yeah.
So, and also just having like fights with friends, very middle school drama.
Okay.
But at the time it was like very impactful.
Yeah.
So I had a therapy to help me throughout all of that, and just like to help me as well stay organized in my school. So she helped me not only in my social life, but also educationally.
That's really good.
Yeah.
My boys have a life coach who's actually a really good friend of mine. So I feel really grateful to have given them this from a young age. How else did you deal with your ADHD and your anxiety?
I think personally for my ADHD, I found it very important to stay organized. I think one of my main struggles was starting off a task and finishing it. Because, for example, in high school, if they gave us an essay, I would never really know how to start it off. And even if I did start it off and I was working on it, 10 minutes in, I would get distracted and just like start doing another thing or another task. And I would also leave everything until last minute. So I found that staying organized was so important, and just as well, if you have like a big thing to do, like a big task, breaking it down and making yourself smaller due dates, because I would also get very overwhelmed by the task, which is why I wouldn't even want to start it. So I'd be like, oh, this is huge. How am I supposed to complete this? And then I would just procrastinate until it was the day before it was due. And I was like, I can't do this. So then it would just stress me out completely. So that's with my ADHD. And I think as well with the anxiety and ADHD, it was very important for me to do exercise. And I think my parents have always been very kind of not forced me, but very lenient for me to do exercise, for me to do boxing, because all of that, it helps me just calm down, and it helps me because in my mind there's always like 1,000 things going on. So when you're doing exercise or just something that you love, that can like you can turn off your brain kind of for a little bit, it really did help me as well afterwards. It just helped me feel a lot more calm and better about everything.
Have you ever tried meditation?
I did. I tried meditation. I did it for a while. Unfortunately, it did not. I kind of got bored of it for some reason. I don't know why. I've tried it, but I kind of midway, I can never turn my brain off. So when I'm like in the middle of like trying to breathe, I'll just start thinking about, oh, I have to do this. So then I'll stop, and then I'll start doing whatever else I have to do. Yeah. So I've never really been able to like finish a whole meditation.
Maybe one day you will.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. One day you will. I used to be like that. I used to be able to like, up till recently only, I actually was struggling with meditation, like 20 minutes in, and I'd be like, okay, I can't do this anymore. And now I can sit for like even 4 hours in meditation without letting my mind wander. But actually when the mind wanders and then it comes back again and you bring it back into the present moment, that's actually already a win. So it's almost like, what you were saying is that like with your education, with your homework, you would break it down with your essay and stuff and everything. But I think with life, generally with everything in life, if you just break it down, and then you just, take one step at a time, just bring one foot in front of the other, as opposed to looking at the mountain, just looking at the steps that you have to take in front of you, then you will eventually get to the mountain.
This podcast was created to inspire and connect with people. If you are liking the content of this podcast, hit the subscribe button, like, follow, and share this platform. Lots of love.
I know that ADHD is quite common nowadays. And do you know anyone, Teresa, who's been diagnosed with ADHD?
Yeah, so my older brother is diagnosed with ADHD and also my best friend. So I have some knowledge on ADHD. But yeah, my older brother got diagnosed at 17, I think, like in senior year of high school. And he's not medicated or anything like that. He doesn't take Ritalin or Concerta or anything. So basically, the use of his diagnosis was just to help him a bit academically. At our school, you get extra time if you are diagnosed with something like ADHD or anxiety, so he just needed a bit of extra support. But it's not like my best friend takes Concerta and then she also got diagnosed at a very young age, so they're very different from each other. But I think it's important to notice that ADHD is not the same in every single person. But
it can be really intense in somebody and it can be really light in somebody.
Yeah.
But it's obviously really important to get diagnosed at a younger age. Then you can actually deal with it a bit better and you can get the help, like you guys are saying, in your school.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sophia, were you ever embarrassed or ashamed that you were diagnosed with ADHD?
Because I was diagnosed at such a young age, I don't think that I ever really felt that ashamed or embarrassed about it. I definitely didn't put it out there. But I definitely never really felt less of myself for having ADHD. I think the thing that kind of did get to me when I was in middle school was being in learning support. And I think that's this big stigma that if you're learning support, you're just stupid. And that it's just, and all of my friends, I remember they used to say oh, you're stupid because you're in learning support. And it was not just me, everyone that was in learning support. We would even call ourselves the stupid class. So it was just the way we saw each other as well. I wish they could have just normalized that learning support, it's literally just for students who needed an extra little bit of help in learning, but that it doesn't make you any less stupid or any different than anyone else. Because I definitely was ashamed at some times of being a learning support.
So do you think that maybe the school needs to speak to the other students in a better way to make them understand that learning support doesn't actually necessarily mean that you're stupid?
I think so. Yeah, I agree. I think they could have definitely as well just raised awareness kind of and educated, especially in middle school, because in high school it's a lot more normalized, but in middle school, just about learning disabilities and kind of what to watch out for. I don't think as I said, was diagnosed at a young age, but I don't think we've ever a teacher, for example, has ever given us if you're feeling this or this or this, maybe you can get some help. They really never talked to us about that. So, and I'm guessing a lot of people in my grade as well in middle school did have some struggles learning, but they just felt it was just them being stupid because they didn't know anything better, and they never got the actual help that they needed. And I just wish that they could have taught us a bit more on when to know to get help. And also just learning support, how it's, and kind of normalize it a bit.
And are there any tools that you've used to help you with your ADHD?
I take Concerta, so I take medication.
Okay.
And it definitely has helped me a lot. I think I also, as I said before, exercising, it helps me a lot. And just if I'm feeling very overwhelmed, I also have a therapist, and trusting my parents with this. I always as well, I remember in high school, sometimes I would get home and I would just, especially in my last year, I would just have so many things to do, I didn't even know where to start. So I would just go to my mom and I would be I need help, I don't know where to start. Because it just seemed it was just so much that I could never even get started with it. And then she would help me break them down and be you can start off with this and then you could have a break and then you could do this. So kind of just individually planning them out definitely helped a lot. And as well, my learning support program in my school, it was so good. And I was very lucky that I had a very good teacher, because I think having a good teacher definitely changes your whole experience. My teacher and I very much connected in an emotional level as well. So she would help me a lot with my well-being, not only educationally. So that definitely did help me out.
That's so nice.
Yeah.
So nice to have a lovely teacher,
Yeah.
isn't it? I still remember my favorite teachers from high school too.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to ask, in fact, this question is for both of you, is there something that you both can give me an insight into how maybe the school can improve on helping kids with bullying, helping kids with ADHD, maybe with the learning support, any sort of like advice that you'd like to give? Because I honestly feel like you guys are the next generation. You guys have experienced all of this, and this will be really beneficial for the generation to come and for the teachers to come, for everyone else, because I still feel like we learn a lot from kids too. You know, as adults, we also have to understand that we learn a lot from you guys. So, Teresa, maybe there's something you want to share?
I think just my main advice was that I think our school and most schools start these talks on disabilities or bullying, etc., like all these really harsh topics too late. I think that they focus on them in high school, where it's much less of a problem, in my opinion. I think middle school is definitely, that's the years where everyone is trying to figure themselves out. It's really complicated. People are being mean just because they're being mean. They're going through puberty, you know. So I think that these talks where we have professionals come in that know about people who've dealt with bullying, or people who have disabilities, who have learning disabilities, and I think that it would be important to have talks with those professionals, and they tell younger people about how to handle it when they come across people who have these struggles. I think that in high school, most people understand the basics about, especially people with learning disabilities, like they understand that. But I think in middle school, it's very like a forgotten topic, and I think that it needs to be talked about much earlier. So I would just suggest schools having people come in at an earlier age so that we can avoid bullying for people that have learning disabilities or etc. You know, not just learning disabilities, just bullying in general. That should be addressed much earlier. I think our school focused on it a little bit too late, and I think that most schools do that. And I understand that it's about like you don't really know how to handle it yet when you're so young, but I think it's important to get the basics into someone who's so young so that when they're older, they have like very strong morals and understand how to understand other people who have different experiences.
Yeah, and also really quick, adding on to Teresa, I think also involving the parents is very important, because I don't think that some parents understand that whatever goes on in the household, that is exactly like your child is looking at you. So you're kind of like, they're looking up at you. You're the role model. If you're in front of them, if you're talking bad about someone or about their appearances, they're going to start doing the same thing. And I wish that parents could have gone to like these discussions as well, not only the kids, but also the parents, so that they could all learn together. And also the parents learn about how dangerous the internet is. I feel like a lot of them don't realize how dangerous it is. And especially with having, at a young age, I had a public account. And it's so dangerous to have a public account because absolutely anyone can access it. And I remember my parents didn't really know any better, so they never really checked. And I would, at that time, it was like cool to like have as many followers as possible. So I would just be accepting complete strangers that I had never met into my account.
Yeah.
And I was probably like 14 years old.
Yeah.
And it's just like, at this age, at that age, and like right now in the world, it's so dangerous to have that and to be doing that. And I just wish parents could have been kind of more aware of how to keep safe on the internet, and just told their child about it as well, and like the morality is, and just all of that. Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, I think that my parents were good at avoiding that.
Yeah.
But I think that there's a lot of parents who, but even then, because my parents like kept me away from social media, I kind of was like, oh, my parents don't want me to have fun. They don't want me to go on the internet. They don't want me to talk to my friends, blah, blah, blah. Right. And I also didn't have like a real phone until much later. So I was genuinely isolated in like some of those middle school years, which is not that serious because of course I was still getting my physical interactions in before COVID and stuff. But I think that there needs to be a balance between those two things, you know, like there shouldn't be a super public account on social media because it like runs the risk of total complete strangers who are older than you doing things that are obviously inappropriate. And then there also shouldn't be like a complete banning of social media to your kids, because then they're gonna build a resentment and be like, why did my parents let me do this? You know, and it's just better to avoid like your kid doing something rash because they're angry at you than like, I don't know. I just think it's important to have a balance between the two. I think my parents were pretty balanced, but I also wish that they'd given me a bit more access to some of the stuff online, you know, but at the same time, I thank them now. And I think that some people who had a lot of access would have appreciated their parents cutting down their, like restricting them a little bit more.
A little bit more, right? So there should be some sort of fine line between the extreme and the not giving them something
And there should
at
be
all.
a discussion with your kids as well about your expectations too. So it's not just, I'm just going to do this and you have to understand why I'm doing this. It should be like, I'm doing this because I want you to be safe. And it's not about, I want to not have you talk to your friends. It's about, I want you to keep safe, you know? So there should be a discussion between the parents and the kids as well.
Definitely. I think as like the discussion with the kids is so important.
Yeah.
Because I know like not even with social media, but like in other things, like my parents, they'll say no and they'll never give me a reason on to why. And that's always what's caused like a lot of fights between me and my parents, because I'm like, you're saying no, but why don't you want me doing this? And they'll never really have a valid explanation. I think it's very good to have like a healthy, open discussion and like you say your point of view, but also let your child express their opinion on how they feel about it and to take it into mind. I know that's my parents have done that very well. They listen to me, although they might not agree with me in certain things. They definitely do listen to me and they try to take it into mind while making a decision. And it's definitely like led me to have a very healthy relationship with my parents.
Yeah, me too. I agree.
Yeah, that's so nice
Yeah.
to hear that, actually. And, you know, going back to what you were saying about the presence of the bringing it back into, like, you know, for the schools to bring it into the middle school instead, wouldn't it be also a really good idea for, let's say, high schoolers like you guys, you know, people who have experienced all of this, to maybe come and talk to the middle schoolers? Because I do feel like kids listen to other kids.
Yeah.
And
I
especially
agree.
kids who are older than them, because they have more respect for them, because they want to become more like them. So I feel like the inspiration would be actually coming from people who have experienced this.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say as well. I think that it would be really important to have people who are older than them, like high schoolers especially, because they've just gone through this, right? So they can voice their concerns without being like too out of date, you know? Like they just exactly went through this, you know? So I think that it would be important. Like, for example, if Sofia and I were to go to like the middle school and talk about our experience and be like, yeah, some of you don't have social media, but that's a good thing, right? Or like, oh, I know you have social media, but you should be safer. I think that they would definitely listen much more than if it was just some adult being like, don't do this, don't do that, you know? Like if you set restrictions on kids, they're not just gonna accept that fully, you know? So it's
adding
important
on
to
what she said, I actually helped hold a seminar for middle school for bullying. So they asked some high school volunteers to help out with it, and it was actually so interesting because, and I think it was the first time they did it. And it was such a better experience, they were telling me, because usually it's hosted by like teachers, and obviously the kids are not going to tell, the middle school kids are not going to tell anything to the teachers about being bullied. But when I went, I know so many kids were coming up to me and they were asking me like, can you please help me what to do in this situation? And they were like going into details about like things, and they were like real problems, you know. And I was helping them, and they were telling me that like they felt like so much better after talking to me, and they were telling me that they would have never asked it, because the first thing they said was, I don't want to get teachers involved, I don't want to ask a teacher about this, but I want to ask someone grown. And obviously, so I was there, and I think it helped me being there so much, and not only me but the other people as well, like the other people my age, because they kind of like look to us as like the cool kids, because we're big, we're adults,
exactly.
but they don't know us like on a personal level, so they're not like scared of like, should I trust you or not, you know. And they really did trust me, and I think that did help a lot. So I think older people going definitely will help.
And my last question to both of you is, what advice would you give your peers? So all the other kids who are in high school, who are in middle school, whatever they're going through with the ADHD, with the bullying, with the social media, what advice would both of you give them?
I would say, for me, what was really helpful for me is talking to my parents. I know that not everyone has the option to do that, you know, sometimes there's strains, but I think if you're able to, and if you trust your parents, you should talk to them and voice your concerns, even if it's like a minor thing, like someone said this to me and I'm feeling sad about it. Like, it's important to voice those things early, because if you don't start telling your parents about that when it's in the early stages, then it could develop into something further, and then you might be afraid to tell your parents, you know? So I think if you have the option, then you should tell your parents. And if not, even though we kind of made fun a little bit about our counselors, even though we kind of did that, like, I think it's important to tell someone who's older than you, you know? I know, like, you can, of course, telling your friends and stuff is an important thing because they can give you advice, right? But if you're both 12-year-olds and going through bullying, like, neither of you will know how to handle that very well. So I think it's important to tell an older sibling, a parent, a counselor, a teacher you trust, you know, like one of those things at least, because then they could guide you into the right direction. You know, they might not be super knowledgeable, but they'll know a bit more than you. So I think it's important, especially when you're younger.
Yeah, and adding on, I think as well, just about bullying, to realize that nothing is ever as it seems, especially online. I actually have 2 weeks ago, I was at the club and I had posted this photo of, and it looked like I was having so much fun. And all of my friends, they messaged me and they were like, I wish I had came. Like, you looked like you were having the time of your life. Like, I was so jealous of this photo that you posted. In reality, I went home 5 minutes later because I was having a terrible night. And I was just so bored. The music was bad, but no one realized that. So everything you post online, it's only the good parts.
Yeah, it's a facade.
Yeah, so you don't post, I didn't post me going home 5 minutes later.
Yeah.
So it's just and it's even with influencers as well. And I think it's so I used to always compare myself to these influencers. First of all, Body Shop. Body Shop, is that what it's called?
Photoshop?
Photoshop. I was like, this is not sound
I'm thinking about Body Shop, the brand.
I don't think it's Body Shop.
Yeah, Photoshop, yeah.
Such a big thing, especially with influencers that kind of especially middle schoolers, they don't really realize about it. Every single thing that most influencers post usually is photoshopped, and they make their appearances look better, and so they're comparing themselves to an unrealistic standard. And I still do this now, even though I know it's photoshopped. It's just comparing yourself to others. But I wish this is something I'm working on myself, but just accepting yourself the way that you are, and realizing that you're still young, and just living life to the fullest and enjoying it instead of just criticizing yourself. Because there's, even in the past years, I'll look at photos of myself and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I was looking so good. But in the moment, I was like, I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror, because I was like, I hate how I look. I wish I was more thin. I wish I was more this. But in reality, I was perfect, and everyone is perfect in their own ways. And I just wish they realized that.
It's so nice talking to you guys. Honestly, I feel like I'm talking to two little adults here, which you guys are now almost getting into that. So thank you so much for today and everything that you guys have shared so openly. I am really humbled by this. And I'm hoping that with this episode especially, a lot more parents will start to understand and listen to their kids a little bit more, reason with their kids better, work on their social media, work on the bullying, and hopefully the schools will also make a few changes through this. And yeah, we'll just keep inspiring people one episode at a time.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, guys.